What's up, beautiful people? How you doing today? It's your boy Zingaga, and we are live. It's Fired Up Tuesday, and you know what it is. We're about to get it done. I got my main man, guys, in the house today. Guys, make some noise.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode. We have a great guest for you guys. You want to do the intro, Zeke?
Yes, today, you already know, we told you to bring her through, and this is a legend, the research genius herself, KC's research genius. You already know what we're talking about. Hey, we got Marissa Vidler in the house. Yo, make some noise with Marissa in the house. Marissa, give a shout out to the people so they know where you at.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thank you guys for having me here today. I don't know where you read that I'm a legend, but if you could send me that link so I can post it, I'd appreciate that.
I think it's like our profile on is it on
It's one of the accolades on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, it's on LinkedIn.
It's
yeah,
my subconscious branding plan, and I'm glad that you picked up on that. So thank you.
This is awesome, man. For those of you who don't know, Marissa is the CEO and founder of Clearbox, and she's also the author of Millennials and Kids. And today we're going to be talking about marketing research and millennials, which is me. And also, you have a research about Gen Z as well.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit much later. But before we get right into it, Miss Marissa, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, like how you came up and become who we know today?
Yeah, so, gosh, where should I start? At the very beginning? I was born on a rainy fall day.
That's like ground zero.
Way back. We're going to be here a while, guys. Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about where I came from, my education, how I sort of got to be an entrepreneur. And first, I want to say thank you for having me here. I love what you guys are doing, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. I want to tell you a little bit about my path to entrepreneurship, because I think when a lot of people think about entrepreneurs today, they think about like the Bill Gates and the Mark Zuckerbergs. That is not my story. Yeah. We didn't have smartphones when I was coming up through college, and we didn't have social networks at the time. So that's not what I did. Mine has been much more of a slow boil, and I was mentioning to you guys before we started that it wasn't really strategically planned out on my part. If you had asked me 20 years ago if I would be an entrepreneur, I would have said, no, I'm just not a risk taker. That's not for me. Yeah. But I think what I want people to take away from my story today is it's not just about that risk or that leap that you take away from that salary or job into doing it yourself. There's these characteristics along the way that you work, the way that you think, the way that you are, that can make you a great entrepreneur. Wow. A legend, if you will.
a legend.
That's going on my card.
The reason why I call you a legend is because, like, I met you in my class, in marketing class, and you went on the stage, you're like, I am a research genius. I'm like, okay, that's some confidence. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that's a legend, you know. If you make that statement, that holds a reputation to it, you know, but just go ahead with what you're saying.
And we'll come back to that, because I know you're curious about where all this crazy confidence came from. So I'm from California originally. I went to Sonoma State University for undergrad, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I remember when I was in high school, my dad, this is the mid-90s, my dad bought me a book, The Information Superhighway for Dummies, and he's like, this internet thing is going to be big. You should go into this. I'm like, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about.
He predicted it.
He did. He knew. Yeah. I'm like, I want to go into theater, and he squashed that pretty quickly. But ultimately, I went into business because I knew that whatever I ended up doing, I'm going to work for someone in a business. So it made sense. Marketing really appealed to me. I liked the psychology of it. I liked the consumer behavior of it. It just kind of made sense. I did take a market research class in my undergrad, and I remember loving the teacher and loving the class and the content, but I didn't quite make the connection then that was going to be my future. So after that, I went into the MBA program. I did that right after school. And so when I got my MBA, and it was time to start applying for jobs, and I had worked since I was 13, but not in like my big girl job yet. I went out and I was applying for like marketing director positions. Here's my confidence rate. And I was completely naive. I wasn't qualified in any way to do that. Oh my gosh. In hindsight, what was I thinking? I was not qualified. But in any case, I got an interview for a project manager position at a research firm, and I liked the boss, I liked the people, I liked the work they were doing. He saw potential in me, and I got hired. And I remember during that interview, and this is like 20 years ago, and I remember it. So in market research, it's project-based. So things are moving really quickly, and you're juggling a lot of stuff and multitasking. And my boss, who was interviewing me at the time, asked me, so hypothetically, if I asked you to work on project A, and we were on a deadline, you needed to get it done, and then you were almost done with it, and I came back to you and said, hey, A is postponed, I need you to work on B, and it's a rush project, what would you do? And I said, well, I would set project A aside and I would work on project B and I'd do my very best to meet the deadline, and then I'd go home and tell my friends what a jerk my boss is.
Wow.
And I worked there for 10 years.
Wow. Wow.
So that tells you what you need to know a little bit about, back then, I don't know if that was confidence or naivety, but either way, that's exactly what I would do. It was honesty, if nothing else. So I worked for that company for 10 years, and I learned just an incredible amount about research. I really knew nothing going into it. And I spent those years just working hard, and I really cared about the work I was doing. I really cared about serving my clients and doing a good job and making sure they got value out of what they were asking for. And I stayed there for 10 years. I would say the first 7.5 years, I was learning and absorbing, and I was getting a lot out of it.
Yeah.
The last few years, it was a smaller company, so I had become kind of a big fish in a small pond, and I was happy with that.
Wow.
I liked it. I liked being important in my little world, and I was a little bit afraid of what that looked like outside of the context of that world.
Wow.
But a few years later, a company, when I moved out here to Kansas City, wanted to hire me, and I went over there, and I'm glad I did, because what I learned at that company, where I was for a few years, I learned everything I wanted to know about research at the time at the first company. But at the second company, my boss, who was really incredible and a mentor to me, she was an amazing marketer and an amazing strategist.
Yeah.
And I think if I had started this company after my first experience, I would have maybe lacked the ability to sell my company. I could do the research, but I didn't know how to kind of articulate it in a really strategic way, which is what companies want. So where this path to entrepreneurship came is a few years in at that company, they started making some reorg decisions.
Okay.
And I didn't love where they were placing me.
Yeah.
I was in the satellite office. They didn't quite know what to do with me. They were putting me in more of a biz dev role, which I was good at. But then I didn't get to do the research, which has always been the fun part
What do you
for
want
me.
to do? Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember...
Were you able to have that talk with whoever is...
Ooh, that's a good question.
Or like where you never thought of, maybe I might talk to them and be like, put me more on the research side?
I think I expressed my dissatisfaction, maybe not super maturely at the time, because I didn't like that people were making decisions about my career on my behalf without talking to me. That was really a big miss, because I had been doing this for 13 years at this point. I was good at what I did, and nobody asked me, what direction do you want to take this? And I think that's what bothered me so much.
Yeah.
And so I started working on my resume, and I realized there wasn't going to be an opportunity for what I do so much here in Kansas City, so I was going to end up working remotely, probably in biz dev. And I went home and said to my husband, I have to make a decision. Should I start interviewing at other research companies, or should I start my own thing? And I posed this question to him and to some close friends, and I was surprised by the answer, because they all knew. They all said, of course you should start your own thing.
Wow.
Here I am, confident as all can be, and I didn't know. This was never the plan, because I didn't see myself as someone who takes risks. And that's a really big risk, to walk away from 13 years of a career and pay to try this thing that may or may not work out. And that scared the hell out of me.
Wow.
Was it your family and friends that pushed you that did it, or because it's
I wouldn't use the word pushed. I would use encouraged.
Okay.
I think that they helped me see that it was going to be worth the risk. And, I felt like, I think the reason that particular risk scared me so much is I didn't feel like I had a safety net. If I say, current employer, please stop paying me. I don't want your regular stable paychecks every 2 weeks. And I do this thing, I felt like that was that. We just died. Like, we're just going to die and be homeless if it doesn't work out. But that wasn't really the case, because I was still very employable. It might be 6 months or a year of trying it out, and maybe it doesn't work out, and it's hard for a little while. But there was never really like, we're going to die. That wasn't, that was just sort of my brain going in a bad direction.
Wow.
So yeah, they did encourage me, and they kind of helped me see that this was sort of an obvious choice, and I was maybe being stupid that I didn't see that.
See it coming.
And that's how I became an entrepreneur.
Wow.
And here we are today, the legend.
Man, that's so like you never saw yourself going into research. You're like, why did you want to go into theater? Like, why was that your idea?
Well, in high school I did theater and community theater, and I was like really good in the chorus, guys. I felt like I could have been a star.
Wow.
And that was not.
You could still be a star.
Yeah.
You're a star right now, but it's.
But it turns out that what I learned in theater, I apply a lot in my work now, because I moderate focus groups. I interview people for a living. And a lot of that is being able to sort of suppress my own thoughts and feelings and opinions, and being able to reach into people and get them to open up to me and talk to me about things and
Yeah.
be on in a way. So I like to believe I still have pursued that
Nice.
theater.
I mean, I think everything comes together. Like everything
It
you
does.
learn, nothing is wasted. You know,
Yeah.
basically. And
Yeah.
I like the story about how you actually work into a research company and not just jumping out of nowhere, but like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Like you actually have some experience to it. You know, and like most entrepreneurs on Facebook or Instagram be like, quit your job or don't even get a job. Just go do something else. you
Just
know?
go do it. Just
Yeah.
do it.
Just do it, like
Just
Nike said.
do
Just
it.
do it.
Yeah.
You know? And I love that experience because sometimes it's. I mean, there are two ways to it. Sometimes when people just like, I'm just gonna jump off a cliff and just go do it. And there's this experience of you knowing that you are good at this thing, and I probably should start my own thing. You know.
Yeah, and I think that there's value, and there are people out there that will jump off a cliff and they can have great success with it. That's not how I'm built. I've always been very pragmatic and logical. I'm not really a dreamer or an idealist, and to take that jump from being pragmatic to, hey, maybe I should throw it all away and start this thing was just too big of a jump for me.
Wow.
So, but I would say to anybody who's looking to do something in the professional services like I am. So I'm not selling a product. I'm not selling a thing. I am basically selling myself.
Wow.
You have to have that experience. You have to have that credibility or it's a very, very difficult path.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
And you got your credibility from, I guess, the companies that you work for. And
Yeah, from just doing it, from
So,
doing
yes.
research and doing research for companies across the country and internationally and building up that skill base, but also that reputation as well.
Awesome.
And I guess your dad would be proud because he envisioned the future, and you are in the future.
Dad, is that true? I can't imagine that he's watching this. He's not on Facebook.
He's like, yeah, I saw it coming.
But yes, let's just assume that he's very proud and he probably
Nice.
knows he was right from the beginning to put me on a path of something that was going to provide a future for myself and my family. He knew the right path for me to take. I don't know that he knew anything about marketing or research at the time or that it would take this particular path, but yeah, they're proud.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, so for me, I'm from Nigeria, and I don't know how, but like sometimes when parents do that kind of thing, it kind of comes off wrong sometimes, where you're like, because I think I was about probably six years old, and I watched this movie where they had this song, I'm leaving on a jet plane. No one knows it.
Yeah, no, I know that.
Yeah,
That's
cool.
Mary Paul and
Man, I don't know. I can't remember who.
Yeah.
But it was like I was like a kid, and after watching that movie, I was like, I want to be an astronaut. And this was back in Nigeria, in probably like 2009. I mean, I was like, there's no space station in Nigeria. Like, how are you? Like, how do you even think of that? You know? And I'm like, that's true. I didn't think that far. But I was a kid dreaming.
Yeah.
But I didn't know I was going to come to the United States. I would have kept my dream on, you know. And he was like going to real estate, you know. And I was like, okay, that looks like a better choice. But for you, what was that like? Do you think it was helpful for you, or was it a struggle for you?
Oh, it was helpful for me. There's no part of me that thought I could be a successful theater major or I was gonna be the next Britney Spears. There's just no part of it. I know that is not my path.
Yeah.
I just needed, especially when I was young and I was a teenager, I needed someone who was a little bit more logical, a little bit more pragmatic to say, if you're going to have a better time finding a job and setting up a career if you make smart choices. And not to say that other majors aren't smart, but for me, business and marketing was the way to go.
And I think at times as well, like it's not about only like just completely giving up your dream. Like if you really wanted to at the same time, I guess you could have taken part some type of theater classes outside of doing your degree.
Well, I'll tell you what I did. This is a secret Facebook. Actually, one of my friends from my 20s.
Only you'll find out.
Yeah. Stay tuned. In my 20s, I enjoyed karaoke and I became a KJ at the local dive bar. And so once a week I would go and I'd lead the karaoke for the night. And that also helped me today because it got me in front of crowds. It got me comfortable talking in front of people and taking those types of chances.
Yeah.
So I have found ways and creative outlets for that part of me, but it's a smaller part of me now than it was when I was youthful.
What would you say is the most important skill that you learned maybe from your job or from maybe a previous life that helps you in your company today?
Well, I think that we can go back to the confidence discussion because, so I started Clearbox Insight 6 years ago. And I think, so when I was making this decision about doing this whole thing, I went out with a friend who is a very respected person in marketing all over the place. He's just super well known and he's someone I trust so much. And I said, I just don't know. What if all the things that I know and how self-important I am now doesn't transfer to the real world? What if I'm only good at what I do in the context of what I do? And I thought this at my last job too. And he said, and this is my best advice to your listeners too, because it stuck with me. He said, Marissa, none of us know what we're doing. And for me to hear that from like a grown-up, like you look around at the people who you think are grown-ups. You're probably looking at me right now thinking, well, she is a grown-up.
I'm not thinking we know you're a grown-up.
You know I'm a grown-up. And here's the thing, I have grown-up thoughts, I have grown-up responsibilities, but at the end of the day, we're all just sort of making it up as we go. And for me, that was such a valuable piece of advice because I guess I felt like I had to know. I had to know everything before I started making this decision. So my confidence has always been there. I came out kicking and screaming confidence and cheering with confidence. Yeah. But the difference between now and when I was in my early 20s is I was kind of faking it back then, right? Because I didn't really have the experience and the knowledge to back it all up, but that was okay. Now I do, and not to say I know everything, though maybe I do. I'm a legend.
You're the research genius.
Right? So you guys know.
No, it's funny. We're kind of going about this whole process as well. Yeah. Kind of the same way.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think it's going to come to a point that we are going to know.
Yeah, we know what we're doing. You know, I actually watched an interview with Oprah and Rihanna today, and Rihanna was like, because Oprah was asking her, how did you become the most sexiest lady in the world? And she was like, well, the truth is, when I started out, I was faking it. Like, I wasn't confident at all. Like, I was just faking it. And it's so important for me to see that people who have made it, they've been faking it till actually they became who they are.
Yeah.
And even in their music videos, you see them saying, I got $1 million, I got $2 million. They have none of that money in the bank account. But with time, it comes out.
It does. And I don't think that there is a moment where I was like, holy crap, I'm not faking it anymore. I don't think that happens, but you know, it's everyone around you, and this isn't something we talk about a lot, but what it comes down to is, you know, the way that I present myself to the world. And we've talked a little bit about this. Like when I came to your class and like, hey jerks, I'm a research genius. What do you want to know? You know, we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses, and I am by no means perfect. I'm very aware of what my imperfections are. But you think about when you meet someone like at a party and they come up to you and they're like, hi, I'm so-and-so and I was sick last week and I sure wish I could lose these last 5 pounds. And versus someone who's like, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. I just did this great thing the other day. Do you want to hear about it?
Wow, yeah.
And so somewhere along the way, I've made this kind of conscious choice that I don't want to be the person that walks up to people and tells them all of my woes. It doesn't mean I don't know what they are, and I certainly share them with my close friends and family. I don't think it's good to completely internalize it. But especially professionally, I'm out there selling my brain, ultimately. I am a one-person business, so I am doing all of the work, with the exception of some things that I get help with. But doesn't benefit me in any way, shape, or form to say, I'm not sure how to do this. I guess maybe I'll figure it out versus I got this. And so that has sort of evolved into my brand over the last few years.
Wow, I have a lot of questions for you, but let me get this right. So your book is about millennials, because I really want to talk about that. I didn't want to like take a lot of time out of that. So millennials with kids. What made you to start that research? Why did you start that research?
So, funny story. So someone connected with me locally on LinkedIn, and I messaged him and said, hey, nice to connect with you. Have we met? Because I had been going to a lot of networking things. And he said, no, but we know some of the same people. Let's get coffee. So we did. And we hit it off, and he said, hey, would you be interested in co-authoring a book? So much like my my strategy towards entrepreneurship, my path towards authorship was very similar. That not really something I had thought of, not really something I necessarily dreamt about, but boy, when it fell in my lap, I said, absolutely. And then I went home and said, how the hell do I write a book?
Wow.
There's that confidence. Yeah, you have to figure it out.
Wow, actually, this is great, because I actually watched a podcast by, I don't know who it is, but he literally said the same thing you just said. He says that whenever you're given an opportunity, don't say no. Always say yes, and then go home and figure it out. Yes. And like seeing it from you doing it, I'm like, okay, this is actually happening. Because it's one thing to see it on Facebook, someone saying it, but it's one thing to see the real genius telling you in person. You know it's a real person. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And the viewers, you should hear this. Like, say yes. Be the yes man. You know, be the yes man who says, okay, I'm going to do it. Then you go home, figure it out. Because there's always a way if you look for it.
And it's okay to be scared too. I think that's the other important piece, that I said yes, and then I had that moment of, oh my gosh, what have I done here?
Exactly.
But it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to not know, but you have to do the work. You have to read the book and What's funny is I don't even really like reading business books, so it's kind of funny that I wrote one. But it's brilliant if you're wondering.
That's awesome.
But I think that proclivity to start saying yes is something that changed for me when I did become an entrepreneur, because I had my own self sort of boxed into this, I'm just not a risk taker persona for so long. And then when I started the company, I couldn't deny it. People saw me this way, and it started to reflect back to me, and I realized, okay, maybe I am actually a calculated risk taker, and maybe that's okay. Maybe I'm better because of it. And I don't really say no now. If I get asked to do a project that's something I haven't done before, I say yes, and I figure it out, and I do it well. Or to write a book, or to run a marathon very, very, very slowly. So slowly.
You did it.
But I did it. And so I think that, and I would say that even in my younger years, early in my career, I did say yes a lot. That's how I got to have such a good background in research, because every type of project, every role that I wanted to play or they needed me to play, I did it. I said yes along the way.
That's amazing.
See, I think it's a fact, because like most people I think everyone works better in pressure.
Yeah.
When you're like, I do not know, you find a way to make it happen. And if you know, you don't even put the effort out to make a way. So I feel like most times the best way to do something is when you're in pressure. Because all your senses are working like, yo, we don't know what to do. Let's find out what to do.
Like SpongeBob, have you seen that episode? You're trying to figure out his name.
It's a lot like that. It's a lot like being SpongeBob.
Yeah, it's like, we don't know what to do. Like, let's find out something to do. So like your book is about millennials. Like, so you're talking about how millennials are no longer kids. They have actually grown up and become people who actually have their own kids. Can you give us like a premise of like your book and what it's really talking about? Like, what is the message of your book?
Yeah, so it's really about how to market to this particular generation, because millennials surprised us a lot. We've seen a lot of differences generation over generation, but never anything like millennials. And Gen Z coming up from behind is very interesting as well, because they're showing some of those same behaviors, but also some more conservative boomer behaviors, which is really interesting. But millennials were not only so new, but I think the other thing that's so fascinating about them is that we're so exposed. Like when I'm sort of on the cusp of Gen X millennial, and when I was growing up, I don't think I ever once read an article about my generation. I don't even know if I read an article when I was young. We just weren't exposed to that.
Exactly.
But millennials have to be so self-aware now, because they're in the news, they're on social media, they're being blamed for everything.
Yes.
So it's such an interesting generation, which I really was attracted to. Like once I got this opportunity and I started learning a little bit about millennials and how it applied to my own life, and my work as well, because I do talk to people of all ages, including millennials. I just found it really interesting. And so the book is really about how millennials are different from previous generations, how millennials with kids are different than millennials without kids and the younger millennials, and then how companies can really target and speak to this generation. Because you guys know, millennials, can I cuss? We're on Facebook, right?
You can curse.
Millennials don't take shit from companies. You have to be authentic. And this is something that authenticity didn't really mean the same thing for companies in the past. They could kind of bullshit their way through it. But now you make one wrong move on social media and millennials are taking you down. And so the book is really targeted to any kind of brand or company that wants to really understand this cohort better.
That's amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. So there are some stereotypes about millennials. Is there one that you think is wrong? Is there one that you can pick out? Like, for instance, I think they said that millennials have an attention span of like a goldfish. It's like 2 seconds or something. Yeah. And I think that's true. That's a fact.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the 2 seconds, but I think a lot of older generations now who are online and are as engaged in technology as millennials and younger people are, we're all like that. I mean, it started with the MTV generation. That's what they called it before, that we just wanted like 3 to 4 minute videos.
Exactly.
And now I think that has changed to the shorter format.
I think it happens, like when you go on YouTube and you see a video like an hour, it takes me a long time to click it, because it's about like inspirational things or something I know about. If it's not something I know about, I'm not gonna watch it. I'm like, I don't think I will have an hour.
Same with Netflix. I know those stand-up specials are cutting their times from like an hour to max 30 minutes because they say by like 20 minutes they're off. But
well, and we have choices now. We didn't have choices in the 80s and early 90s. So I would say here's the biggest myth, because I think there's a lot of them out there and they're in the book. You can read right through that. But here's the biggest myth, is that a lot of people think that millennial the label of millennial comes with behaviors, and that's not how it works. You're a millennial because you're born within a certain time range. Period. End of story. It doesn't matter if there's no self-identifying as a millennial. That's just not how it works. So I hear a lot from people who fall into that millennial range. Well, I'm not a millennial because I'm not like those entitled brats, or I'm not like those lazy kids, or whatever they say. But at the end of the day, if you were born in those years, you're a millennial. It's not really up for debate.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we do a segment where we do current events. You got us, Gus?
I got you.
All right.
Specifically about millennials.
What have millennials ruined today?
Here, so this is one from the New York Post, and it's titled "Millennial Dads Have Pathetic DIY Skills Compared to Baby Boomers." So those are kind of like do-it-yourself skills. So fixing a sink, the classic things that I grew up with. Yeah, my dad could probably fix it. Handyman stuff. So it kind of just touches on that, and I wanted to ask you, what do you think about that, or what, if any research that you've done has anything to do with just maybe how millennials could be lazy, sort of say, when it comes to like hands-on stuff?
Yeah, I mean, not from research, but just, so I don't think it's wrong that, and I wouldn't just put this on men or on dads. I would say as a generation as a whole, we're less DIY in that fashion. But I think that the point that article is missing is dads are so much more involved in their children's lives and in parenting now. Some dads are the ones that stay home with their children. So I think that's a really great example of how millennials are the villains in social media that you guys are exposed to all the time. When in reality, sure, maybe you don't know how to fix stuff like our dads did, but you're also having to work more hours for less pay. We're underemployed as they are underemployed as a generation. And men are so much more involved in the parenting that maybe it's okay that you can't fix the sink if you're able to care for your children.
That's a great point.
Boom!
Wow.
There you go. Millennials won.
It's like, we want to take care of our kids. We don't want to fix the pump or whatever.
And millennial women want you to take care of the kids as
exactly,
well. I mean, that's the other piece of it.
Yes.
If you polled the women who are married to these men and asked, would you rather your husband can fix the sink when it breaks once every few years, or do you want him to co-parent and take 50% of the parenting? I think you know what she would say.
Yeah, I don't care about the sink.
You get a guy for that, right? There's some guy out there that
I got a guy.
Can your dad come over and fix the sink?
That's one of the things I also thought about. We also have a lot more ways of maybe getting this fixed,
That's a great point.
My dad wasn't able to go on Yelp, see a review of a handyman around, I don't know, my neighborhood, and maybe go that way.
Or better yet, you just go to YouTube and see if you can fix it yourself.
Exactly.
Like, you don't have to have that base of knowledge because you have all this knowledge at your fingertips at all times.
It's amazing. We have, let's see, another one. Okay, so this one is titled, "What's the problem with millennials in the workplace?" So one part that caught my attention, which I could relate to, is that it says that new graduates have seen older employees who have been at their companies for many years and dismissed and treated like disposable assets. So they are trying to protect themselves. So in other words, this traditional contract of employment has been broken for that generation. They don't have the same company loyalties that were expected in the past. Which is something that I could see in my family. That's like, you see your dad working a lot of hours and maybe not being used the way that he could, and like kind of felt like he kind of owes something to this company. I, on the other hand, I feel completely opposite. Like, if I get out of here, I'm, checking out my options, and even friends that are in the workplace for me right now, they don't feel like so attached to this place they work for, and I just thought I found it interesting. I don't know.
I think that's really reciprocal. I don't know that that's a function of millennials and their behavior so much as it is a function of the companies, that you don't get pension anymore. You don't get the same kind of benefits package. It's harder to come by health insurance or some of the things that might compel you to stay with the company. I think also we talked before about that 2-minute or 2-second goldfish thing. Yes. And I do think that sort of come into careers as well, that even in school, I don't think you're so encouraged that you want to stay at the same place for 30 years. Because like I was talking about earlier, I became this big fish in a small pond, and I learned what I learned. And there's a point at which you're just not going to learn anymore unless you expand. So I think it's good for your careers to move around, to be thoughtful about it, and don't move around every 4 or 5 months or even every year. But I don't think that companies are giving any incentive for you to want to stay for that amount of time.
Yeah. Do you think also like having this entrepreneurial spree on the internet, that I think it kind of helps push it more, where you kind of see everyone's becoming an entrepreneur, someone's trying to like get out their job and start their own thing. they think that kind of influences. I think that kind of influences it too, where we are not too stuck upon our jobs because we know we're going to be a billionaire.
We're all going to be billionaires. I mean, we're so close.
We're this close, like
But-
we are dollar close.
Yeah, I think it's, there is something to be said about, millennials grew up in a time where they did believe they could do anything.
Exactly.
And they could
Yes.
until the market tanked.
Yeah.
And what's unique about Gen Z is that they saw that. They saw the market tank. They saw their parents losing jobs. They see millennials in an incredible amount of debt and completely underemployed. And so that's causing the Gen Zers to be a little bit more conservative financially and have more of an attitude of, I'm going to work towards my personal success and I am going to work hard for it. Gen Z is still young. We're going to see how that pans out. That could just be this youthful spirit right now, but I think it's an interesting difference between Gen Z and millennials.
Nice.
Let's give us one more. Let's go.
One more. I have one about beer and one about toilet paper, but they both relate to millennials.
Super curious about how you guys are ruining toilet paper.
Toilet paper?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is...
Like, what are you? Maybe I don't want to know. What? Go ahead.
You might want to know.
So it's titled "Giant Toilet Paper Rolls Designed for Millennials Are Here." So it's a new thing that Procter & Gamble has created, which is giant rolls. So this was in response to research that shows a rise in single-person millennial households with limited storage space to stash many smaller rolls. So a standard cylinder toilet paper roll is 4.7 inches, and this one is 8.7 inches. So
I'm very concerned about if it's going to fit in the toilet paper holder. I mean, this is a real issue, you guys, that I don't think is being addressed.
So it's actually, there's a picture. It's huge, like in toilet paper, but like the actual tube or cylinder is the same size. Yeah.
So I think that makes sense. So one of the things.
You see it?
Oh my god!
Yeah.
But see, that's not on the wall. That's not
Yeah.
the kind like I have that's on the wall. I don't
Okay.
think something like that would
Will
fit.
fit.
That's like assuming you have a portable toilet paper holder,
Yeah.
like in that picture. So I think part of where that's probably coming from is that we do see that millennials are more likely to live with multiple roommates for longer than in the past because you're not getting married at such a young age, so there's more time between college or leaving your parents' house and whatever the next phase is going to be for you. And then secondly, just economically speaking, it's very difficult to have your own apartment or share with only one roommate.
Yeah.
I don't think we see it quite as much here in the Midwest, but certainly on the coast, people are 5-6 people in a house. And so I think it does make sense. The other benefit, I don't know if it talks about it in the article, but it seems like there's also an environmental benefit because you don't have as many of the toilet paper rolls.
Exactly.
I don't know if they're biodegradable or if they're bad for the environment, to be honest, but even if they're not, the perception is I'm wasting less.
Yeah. It's like less weight. Can you? Yeah, just do the beer. I think the beer one is really the beer one.
Well, I have a quick question about what you said about your
Yeah.
household. What is that reason that you think that maybe millennials are not living? Well, you just said strictly economically. They just
It's student debt.
Okay.
It's underemployment.
Nice.
It's the competitive work field that they are having a hard time getting paid enough for a living wage. It's a lower minimum wage. It's all of those economic variables.
Okay.
Is why they need huge toilet paper.
Nice. Now you guys know.
Yeah, and knowing is half the battle. You might be too. That's G.I. Joe.
And the last one, which I thought was interesting too, is called "Alcohol is now being marketed as a wellness drinks." This kind of talks about, I guess, we're more health conscious as millennials.
Yeah.
So now all these, well, not all, but there's a couple of alcohol companies like Sam Adams that come up with there's a beer called 26.2 Brew. So they call it like their title is, it's the beer Forerunners by Runners. So it's pretty much similar content, less calories, but then they'll add other things. So for example, this one, they says it has Himalayan sea salt, which helps you replenish your body with electrolytes. So I don't know what you think about that. Would that be successful in any way for you to?
I think maybe several years ago it could have. I think that now people will see through something like that. I actually did a little bit of research in sort of the healthy alcoholic beverage space last year. And I mean, it's true because many millennials and younger people are just a lot more body conscious and health conscious and environmentally conscious. So I think there's a place for that. I don't know that adding all sorts of junk to beer is going to be the solution. I would imagine also it's going to be really expensive, which is going to make some of the appeal and gimmickiness of it sort of put aside. So there's probably a market for it, but I don't think it's a real big market.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds good for people who a few millennials actually go on the internet to search about things, which are the really conservative ones. But other people just pick it up and drink it, and then find out later it's not good, you know.
Exactly. Like when you do path to purchase research, where you're actually shopping along with people, which I do often, and you see how they're making that decision and how they're taking in all those products and labels. Would they even notice? Like, would they even get to the point where they see the fine print that says that what makes this beer unique?
Yeah, I think it's just a very few people who actually can do that. Okay, so I think that's it.
That's it.
So another question I have for you is, so do you have any tips for marketing to millennials in general? Like, what are the tips you can say that are the most effective ways you can market to millennials, or what you understand about them?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier authenticity, and I know that's kind of a buzzword, but I think it's especially important in this day and age. Any brand or any company that tries to tell people who they are but is not living up to that is going to be called out. That's what the internet is really for these days.
Do you have any examples of maybe some brands that you've seen?
Well, I think Gillette is a good example. That Gillette did that campaign about masculine toxicity, and it was a good commercial for the most part, but it didn't align with what their brand is about, and it doesn't align with what their brand has been about, where they sell pink razors for 3 times more than blue razors, right? So they have these kind of gender issues that no one really cared about until they came forward with this social campaign that really has nothing to do with their brand. So that kind of authenticity is really important. Also, of course, digital marketing, which I'm not an expert in that area, but is something you just can't ignore in this day and age with that generation. Also, you know, with that beer that you talk about, and even the toilet paper, those are coming from a really good place. They have done research. I can tell they've done research, and they've talked to consumers about what are those unmet toilet paper needs you're having, and what would get you to drink more beer. And so from my perspective, and this is true of any generation, you've got to talk to the customers. If you want to be able to serve your customers well, you have to talk to them and find out what makes them tick, why do they do the things they do, and what's going to be most valuable to them.
Awesome. So another question. So I think you talked a little bit about this in our class, about how you got the name Research Genius.
Yeah.
Can you give us a debrief of how that name came about?
Yeah, so before I was on my own and I worked for other people, I always had to fight for my title, and I always had to fight for having the desk I wanted, or the office, or the chair. And that's pretty standard when you work for companies.
Yes,
everybody goes through this.
Yeah.
And so when I sort of broke away from that and I had this newfound freedom, you know, I'm funny. Humor is a part of who I am, and I wanted my brand to be kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's serious. We do serious work, but we also have some fun. And so that's kind of how Research Genius came about. I think it might have been over drinks with some people that we thought it up, which is how you build a business, is over drinks. I will say this, though. So I have them on my business cards, like you saw, and when I handed my business card to a client of mine who I'd worked with a long time, he said, you know, you might want to consider that some of your clients have been in research a very long time and may not appreciate the tongue-in-cheekiness of it. And so the end result was that I put quotes around genius, because it is meant to be tongue-in-cheek. I really don't feel like, I mean, I'm not a child prodigy of market research. I've just been doing it a long time. But it does also sort of set the tone for who I am. It's a great icebreaker when I hand somebody my card. And I think also for people in the corporate world, they can really appreciate just the ability to have a little bit of fun with it.
Wow. So one thing I want to say is your card is impressive. When I got it,
Thank you.
It was legit. It's like a legit card. I was like, yo, this is legit. I like the concept of like, this is a big company. You know, you want to, and also, so you work alone, right?
I do, yes.
How do you do that? How do you?
Well, like I told you, I was in sweatpants until about 4:30 today when I had to get changed to come here because I was working on a report. You know, it can be hard at times when I'm busy, like I have been. It can get kind of crazy and it feels a little bit out of hand. So I do have to sort of be careful with my time when things aren't busy. I have to just sit and take it easy. That's a really important piece of it. But I've gone back and forth. Every time I get really busy, I think maybe I should hire people. Maybe now's the time to do it. And I always come back to the thing that made me unhappy at my last job was that I got into sort of managing the idea of research, managing sales, managing people, and not doing the research. And right now, it's not really worth the hassle for me. It might be different in the future, but every time I weigh it out, I like having the flexibility that I do. And once I have employees, I can't just go take a nap at 2 o'clock because I'm exhausted from the report I just wrote, which, fun fact, I do take a nap after I finish a report because it takes a lot out of me. But that whole like sitting at my desk from 8 until 6 just because I want to be seen working, which you do when you're working for someone else. One of the best things about working for myself is I don't have to do that. I'm really great in the morning, and then if I'm like writing a report, for instance, by 3 o'clock my brain gets kind of mushy and I step away from it. And if I have employees and I am setting the role and leading the way, it's just not where I'm at right now, but I am kind of autonomous in that way. I enjoy alone time and working alone. And then when I'm moderating, when I'm talking to people, I get my people time. So I'm getting a pretty good balance of that.
Well, what is it like to be like an entrepreneur who works alone in KC? Is that hard to get like
it's
customers and
awesome.
stuff?
You know, I think if I was still living in the Bay Area when I started this business, I think it would have been much, much harder to do because there's more competition. There's just more research companies in that area. But one of the great things about Kansas City is when I started this company, people just wanted to help me. Like, for instance, that beautiful business card I had, my designer, Jodine Coleman, she designed the logo for me at no cost because I was a new business and she wanted to support me.
That's awesome.
And I think that the networking in this area is really incredible. And I'm not limited to only working with companies in Kansas City. I do have a good Kansas City presence, but I have clients all over the country too, because I can either travel to them or we do the work online or in some other format. So I don't feel like Kansas City is limiting at all. I think actually Kansas City has very generously put me on their shoulders and paraded me around and helped build my business, which is why I'm so happy to do this. I'm so happy to meet someone for coffee and talk to them about their career or their business, and I do that quite often.
Yeah, I just want to say that we need to follow her around because I think she has the best friends that can help out.
Absolutely,
yeah. We need to follow her around. Just like
I'm very lucky.
We need to do a logo. Here you go. We need a mic. Here you go. You know, they just piece everything together. I love that because it's sometimes people get scared because they are afraid of starting because they don't know if they're gonna have people support them.
Yeah.
And being able to hear you say that actually it's a good way to go where I have a support, even though it might seem I'm working alone, but I have people who actually helping the brand grow as well.
Absolutely. And I was really surprised, and part of this is just because I was still relatively new to Kansas City when I started it. We were maybe living out here 3 or 4 years at the time. When I would meet with someone and they wanted to support my business and I tell them what I do, they would say, oh, you know, I know someone you should meet in marketing. And it wasn't just the people I was coming in contact with, but it was their willingness to introduce me to their people. Yeah. And so that was sort of how I learned to network. I do that now because if you're telling me you're looking for a job in marketing, I'm thinking about, well, who do I know who might be a good match for you to do an informational interview with, or maybe we can get your resume in. So I try to pay that forward because I feel very, very honored that people did that for me earlier in my career.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a Midwest thing? Because
absolutely.
I feel the same way coming from Florida. I feel the same way.
Yeah. It's absolutely a Midwest thing. People are just freaking nice out here, and I like it.
I love it. Okay, so this is probably we have 3 minutes to go, but give us. Do you feel like you're going to be expanding anytime soon, or what is the vision for your company? Where do you think? The vision, the purpose for it, what you want to do in the nearest future here. What is the vision for it?
That's a great question, and I've been thinking about that since 9 minutes before you started when you mentioned that you might ask that. And here's my answer. It's I don't know, and I think it's okay that I don't know, because you can see that this has sort of just happened organically for me with the hard work, with the experience. But what's interesting is when I started this company, this wasn't actually what I had intended to start. So I do a lot of qualitative research, like focus groups and in-person and shop-alongs, ethnography, that kind of stuff. I thought I was going to start a quant house doing like web surveys and that I would have a building and I would have programmers and I would have project managers because that's sort of my background initially in research. And then when I started the business, I started getting phone calls, hey, we need you to do some qualitative research. And so that's how Clearbox Insights sort of took the path it's on. So I think it would be naive for me to make any predictions about where I'm going to be because a lot of that is sort of driven by the people around me and my clients and the industry and what their needs are. But I think it's safe to say I don't know. And for those of you out there that don't know, that's okay. Just keep working hard until you have it figured out.
Wow, that's awesome. We have 2 minutes to go. Is there any advice you can give to our listeners? You already given them one. Is there any advice in terms of pursuing the purpose or building on their strengths or their weaknesses or what they should focus more on if they want to start something that will grow eventually in the future?
Yeah, I think bringing it back, confidence obviously, but that networking piece, especially living in the Midwest and Kansas City, is just so important because you will run into the same people. I just had a call with someone the other day, a new supplier who I had worked with 20 years ago, two companies ago, and our paths crossed again. So it's so important to talk to people, to build out that network. If you're creating or trying to sell a new product or service, talk to consumers, find out if there is a market for it. But I think that networking piece, and just don't be afraid to go out there and talk to people. You can't build a business just sitting behind your computer and hoping that it all comes to you. 95% of the time it doesn't work that way. You have to put yourself out there.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, you've heard it from the horse's mouth. The research genius herself, Marissa Vidler, in the house. We're going to be signing out now, but thank you guys for tuning in today. And this is going to be out on YouTube. Oh, yeah. Where can they catch you at? LinkedIn,
like I'm
Facebook.
right here.
I mean, in the air. In the air.
Where to be found?
Where can you be found in the air?
I'm on Facebook, Marissa Vidler, as well as LinkedIn, Marissa Vidler, and that's sort of the extent of my social media presence.
Awesome. And your company is Clearbox.com?
Clearbox Insights. That's clearboxinsights.com.
Okay, so you guys, I'm going to put that in the bio as well. And hey, thank you guys for tuning in today. And you guys remember, stay fired up and pursue your purpose. We're going to be signing out for now, but see you next time. Bye-bye.
Peace out.
What's up, Fired Up Nation? Man, thank you guys for watching that awesome video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hey, remember to subscribe, push your like button, and always share with your friends. And hey, also let us know if you have any questions or any comments. Let us know in the comment section below, and we'll keep in touch with you. Thank you again, and subscribe now. Subscribe, please subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.